Welcome to the Money Made Human podcast. It celebrates at its heart the work of credit unions and their vital role in enriching our lives and communities. Brought to you by First Class Credit Union, each episode features insightful discussions revealing the meaningful impact that can be made through economic collaboration. Mostly, it's a collection of compassionate conversations about navigating life and the individual journeys we take. Good morning, friends. Good morning, members, and welcome to Money Made Human, a podcast by First Class Credit Union. We're delighted today to be joined by our friends in the Irish League, and let me introduce them. We have the President of the Irish League, Brendan Jenkins. We have the CEO of the Irish League, David Malone. We have the Treasurer of the Irish League, Dave McCauley, who's also the CEO of the oldest credit union in Ireland, a Donore Credit Union. And we have Paul Hume, who is one of the directors at the Irish League, and also the nephew of John Hume, the Nobel Peace Prize winner. What a crew. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's a Glasgow welcome for you, I think.
Thank you.
I have so many questions to ask of you, if that's okay. First of all, I can't be remiss of me not to ask this, but on Sunday, an Irishman putted to retain the Ryder Cup. And I just wonder what your thoughts are and what's your fellow countrymen saying about that?
Dave Malone plays golf, so we let him take that one.
I don't play it too well, Gayle. Team player, I know it was great. I think it was great to see, but it was very much a team effort, wasn't it? Like, I know the winning putt was from the Irishman, but I think it was very much the team effort. And that's something that I think reminded me of the credit union sector, that team working together against the odds as well, over there, putting up a fair bit of tough comments from the spectators, and they dealt with it so well, and they came through it. And I think, the team spirit, the collaborative nature of that spirit, them all working together, even with their different skill sets, complementing each other, was fantastic to see. So that's what really resonated with me from the Ryder Cup of the weekend.
It was just brilliant, wasn't it?
Yeah, and for me, Shane's dad is from Fermanagh, County Offaly. He's from the same parish as my wife, so I would know Shane's uncles all very well. Just lovely, humble people. And it was just a proud moment for us. And as David said, against all the odds, there was that kind of wee bit of kind of heightened tension in the crowd that actually probably drove the Irish team on, or the European team on. It was just a great moment.
I think what stood out to me was the for all the accolades that team has won individually, that it still meant so much to them. I mean, like, you'd think that was his first win ever.
Yep.
And to me that's the enthusiasm to have for the game.
Oh, it was just fabulous.
I think from my perspective, looking at it again, it just demonstrates the Irish punching above their weight. We're such a small country, such a small population, and yet we're big and loud and vocal, and we're in there and able to compete with the best. And we have that confidence and assuredness now to do that. And it was really interesting reading his remarks as he went to that last tee. He was so positive. If I do this, there was no like wilting or stepping away from what the challenge was there. So that was great. And for him on a personal level, he lives in the shadow of obviously Rory McIlroy, who's probably more naturally talented. But for him to do that and achieve that, but overall, going back to David's comments, the team was team effort, and it's the first 2 days which really laid the foundation for that tremendous success. And as a known golfer, just the sporting nature of the event, it just sticks in your head. It's just fantastic.
Just immense. Dave, I want to pick up on something you said there about Ireland punching above their weight, and kind of link it to the banner we've got in the background there called Money Made Human. I want to share with you I guess a secret that we've not told you guys, but we were inspired by your delegation at the recent World Conference. We were inspired by 3 delegations, in fact. The delegation from Ukraine, just their stoicism and resilience. We were inspired by the delegation from Brazil, in terms of their passion and energy, but we were also inspired by the Irish delegation. And we saw things at the conference that really inspired us to come back and put together a refresh of our branding, Money Made Human, and also the podcast. And for us, it was a way to show our members that we care about them and that they're humans to us. They're really, really important to us. But it was also a way to bring some of the skills and qualities we've seen in other credit unions and industry leaders back home with us. And you guys were such a big part of that. Your compassion, your kindness, your collaboration, the way you moved as a delegation that was all inclusive. And we just wanted to say we really, really appreciated seeing that and being a tiny part of that. And I wondered, is that part of the Irish League ethos overall?
Yeah, fundamentally, for credit unions in Ireland, it's always been about the member. It's always been about the community. And it's always been like putting members first and foremost in what we do. And we're a volunteer-led organization, and we call it a movement, because we regard us as being a movement, we regard us as being a force for good in our society. And I do challenge and challenge myself and challenge my colleagues to always, say we're much more than financial services. We're in the people business. And behind every loan, there's a story, there's a person. And that's what we have to remember. That's what sets us apart, and that's what kind of distinguishes us. So fundamentally, we're there for the poorest, the most successful in society, and we're not there to, be a charity. We're not there to give a handout, but there through mutuality to give a leg up to everybody. And we do that by mutual empowerment. And we do that by the fact that we are a movement, and we're cooperatives, and we're democratically owned, and we're member focused. And therefore we have to combine those values and be proud of those values and embrace those values and sell those values, because, in the end, all we've got is each other, and I think coming from, a country that probably struggled for a long time in its past, and certainly since independence, to being one of the most successful, probably European countries at the moment. I personally think the credit union and the credit union philosophy has had a big part to play in that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really it. It is a human story. It's a great story. And I think it's something that we should just really cherish.
And I think to follow on that, Dave, I think we do the human side really well.
Yeah.
And we do it naturally. It's not put on. It's not plow. Like our first meeting with you, Gayle, was in that massive foyer of the conference hall, and you were a bit upset over something that happened in your own team, and all we done was just acknowledge that and offered you our support, and that was just done naturally. It wasn't done for any other reason other than we're human beings, and we're credit union people, and we look after each other, basically.
Yeah, and I think, Gayle, an important thing to say, and Dave slightly touched on it there, is what you see in our delegation is Irish society lived out, Gayle. We are a culture that looks out for one another. Whether you live in rural Ireland or in urban Ireland, we as a community look out for our neighbours. We dig deep for them, and the credit union allows us to kind of live out that culture in everyday life. Like if in rural Ireland, Gayle, if somebody dies, the neighbours rally around, they help with the funeral, they help with the car park, and they help. And what you've seen in our delegation is just how we live out our culture and our life. It's one of collegiality, it's one of comradeship, it's one of reaching out to each other in times of need.
I think that's it, Gayle, as well. Like, I think that community piece, and the guys have said it so well there, even think about that a bit more, like from an Irish perspective. There won't be a town or village in Ireland you won't go down where you won't see a credit union office. So there's 500 on the island of Ireland, and that's the presence in every local community. And credit unions are so much more than just, David said this, as a financial service. They're the hub of the community. In many places, the banks in Ireland, they closed their branches, and I've been at many places where the credit union remains as the only real community piece. And it's more than just providing financial services. It's actually a community hub itself in particular. And we use this phrase about the banks, to be honest. There are bank branches left in Ireland. And I've experienced this myself directly. My mother had Alzheimer's, and I was trying to engage with the banks, her own bank, about, trying to set up her records. I went into the branch, and all I was met with was one person and 20 computer screens. And I said, go over to that computer screen and sort it out yourself. There was no human touch, and that's something we're even talking about ourselves. We are looking at the digital offerings for credit unions in Ireland as well. We've this lovely phrase, I think, that encapsulates, and it's much more than a soundbite. It's digital when you want it, but human when you need it. And that's vital. So yes, we've digital offerings, but they'll never replace the human offerings as well, especially if you want to have that direct contact with a person in the credit union branch.
I think that sounds very similar to what we're offering in terms of Money Made Human, in effect. We proudly serve members in Northern Ireland, being a national credit union. But can I ask, why is the scale of credit unions so different in Ireland, across Ireland and Northern Ireland? Why is it so much bigger than it is in the UK?
It's just that what everybody has mentioned now, the community. Like every credit union in every town and every village, as it would have been in the day, the credit union was set up for that community, and the role they played in the community and still play in the community is why people are loyal to it. We have seen people. I have seen people when I was a CEO who went into liquidation, or they went into, and they technically couldn't pay us because of where they were, but they wanted to pay the credit union over and above all the other creditors, so it's just that loyalty built up over years of community spirit.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, Gayle, too, is that, back in the 60s, for a lot of people who were unemployed or on low salaries, there was no access to credit. The banks didn't want to know people unless you owned a house or had a business. And the credit union basically transformed the lives for people like that. My father's generation, they gave a line of credit that educated people, that helped people with marriages, helped them to buy their first house, and it's lived out every day, Gayle. People see that, they remember it, and there's a loyalty to that. And the second thing, Gayle, that more modernly, is that when the banks crashed in 2008, our doors were open. We kept the line of credit to people where they couldn't get it as well, and people are loyal to that.
And so, well, credit unions, are very much bottom-up organizations. They were set up by just ordinary people. Like in the case of Donore, it was just three local girls, three local sisters, and they learned this idea, but they had the vision, I suppose, the courage to start off something. So something that's naturally organic, grows up in the community and successful. It can attract an enormous sense of belonging, a sense of ownership, and a sense of loyalty. And when people have a say in that, and they see the success with it, there's a real sense of being successful and want to be associated with that success. And I think that's the beauty of the Irish credit union movement, is that we've successfully managed, and hopefully we can continue to manage, that common touch, that commonality of purpose, that just ordinary Joe soaps. People turn around and say, go to credit union. Oh, I need this. I'll just go to credit union. I need that. Just go to credit union. We're seen as being just there for them. We're seen as being just we may not come into people's, folks from one end of the year to the other, but when things kind of get tough, or there's an emergency, go down and talk to the credit union. And you're going down to talk to like Christine or Nolene or Denise in our offices, who are from the local area, who understand, and who will give a sympathetic or an empathetic ear to people's needs, and we try not to say no. We will talk to people in a prudent and provident way and make sure that we're not overextending. But we also try not to say no. We try to facilitate and dig people out of a hole. So I think that's something unique that credit unions have, and I think that's kind of has engendered and delivered that loyalty and that massive engagement that we have with our members, which is fantastic, and how long may it continue.
Dave,
Sorry, if I can just mention the personal touch again. For 28 years that I was CEO in Clonus, I was known as Uncle Brendan. That was the term that I was known in the community, because when people wanted something, we were up to talk to Uncle Brendan.
Brendan, that's quite scary, actually. You probably
I know.
And
Thank you, Dave.
Gayle, there's something come into my head there, Gayle, and I think it kind of lives out the credit union. We have a football league here in Letterkenny and in Donegal, the Donegal League, with numerous teams in it. I would say on Saturday morning, Gayle, when if you pick randomly 20 teams that are playing in the league, each one of them will have received some form of sponsorship from their local credit union throughout the county.
Right?
Aye, and I think that kind of, for me, always epitomizes that when I go to different football games at local leagues, there's always the credit union logo around the pitch, and it might be on the jerseys. So in terms of living out in the community, there's just a concrete example of not measuring ourselves by loan book expansion, but by what we do for the community.
And I think as well, if it's good to come in there, just around that question, Gayle, so the credit union sector in the island of Ireland is 3.6 million members, and we're very proud of the fact that's the highest penetration rate in the world of membership per percentage of population. And I think exactly what the guys have said there. A couple of things stand out to me, I suppose, as well, is that we've more physical locations than all the banks in Ireland combined. That's all of them combined. We've more physical locations. So we're doing what we say. This is real stuff. And another piece that kind of stands out with me as well is we have our insurance, our loan protection life savings insurance. And I was just looking at the stats on this, and it's not about money, right? But this is obviously, if you die, the loan is repaid. And then another instance where, there can be a savings piece paid out, especially if somebody dies. Those challenging moments. And in the last quarter, we've supported 3,600 families with life savings insurance, and with 650 families for loan protection insurance. So that's real people going through the stress of a passing away. And as Paul said, the credit unions are there for you. They're there for you. And we've actually even looked ourselves. We're doing a bit of a social impact study nationally at the moment, which is something we probably should have done before, because the guys encapsulate so well all the social impact of credit unions. We're doing that nationally. We're going to launch that early next year. But there's €5 million provided by credit unions in terms of charitable donations and sponsorships we've seen across nationally in the country itself, which is an amazing figure. And that goes back to sponsorships, but also community supporting those communities. So I think that the beauty of what the credit union sector does here is, it really does what it says in the tin. We have and I think it comes back to our core operating principles. That's where it all really comes back to. Like, all these PLCs and big corporates are developing customer charters and codes of conduct, and yet the credit unions had that, like in Scotland, 65 years ago when they were established, they were there. And I think that's the key. And it's more than just principles up on a wall. Every credit union we visit, regardless of their size, we feel that the staff, the directors, all live that day in, day out.
And I think just when you mentioned the 10 principles, I think they also still mean as much to our members and to us as professionals as they did when they were developed, as David said there 60 years ago. That the principles haven't changed. Technology and all sorts of things have changed, but your core principles haven't.
Yeah, and Gayle, just to live out the credit union as a person, as a human, not just as a chair. Like, I have 5 daughters. I've put the 5 of them through college. Each one of them now works in the health services. I couldn't have done that without.
Now he has to marry them.
But I couldn't have, literally about 40 grand each to put somebody through college. And I often think that the credit union logo should be on each one of their foreheads, because that's what brought them through.
That supported them.
Yeah.
I think what's fascinating about doing this podcast is that it gives our members a glimpse of the people involved in our industry. And what came across very clearly there when you were talking about the impact credit unions make is your own personal ethics and values. And I just wanted to ask a personal question of each of you. Who has helped you become the person you are? Who has inspired you along the way? Because the coaching, the business strategies you put in place are having an onward ripple effect to your members and your communities. But how did you get them?
Gosh,
For,
that's a good
Great
question.
question.
That's a good question. I would probably say in my case, it was probably a combination of my mother,
Mhm.
who I lost at a very early age, and then I suppose the community who stood in and looked after us, and then in turn I went back and worked into the community naturally. I know that sounds a wee bit, hairy fairy, but it's sort of, like community, I suppose, really is the answer for me. Community in a couple of different guises.
Mhm.
Yes.
For me, Gayle, my father was a nurse. He was a great community worker. Our house was like a constituency clinic. People coming looking for assistance, whether it would be a form filled out, whether it would be a bit of counselling around mental health or addiction. And he led by example. He was just a deeply principled man. He embodied several principles, and it's like some of the things he used to say is like, "You'll never have what you want, but you'll always have what you need."
Mhm.
Good saying.
He used to say that life was like a ladder, and he says, "You're on the ladder, you've got a house and a job." He says, "Your job is to keep looking down and pulling the people up behind you." So for me, Gayle, it was my dad who lived out them kind of principles.
What was your dad's name, Paul?
Paddy.
And what was your mum's name, Brendan?
Maura.
Maura. Nice.
Yeah, Gayle, for me, it's probably my parents, and I grew up in inner city working class Dublin, probably rough neighborhoods. By an early age, I knew certain things I didn't want to be, I couldn't be. I didn't want to be a criminal. I didn't want to get involved in drugs. And equally, I was pretty useless at DIY, so I knew I couldn't do that stuff. I could play a bit of football, and I wasn't a bad football player, and I played for a club called Home Farm, which is probably very famous
Absolutely,
club here
absolutely.
in
Very good
Ireland.
team.
Yeah,
Very good team.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they had a philosophy about not just being very successful on the football team, but the young lads would be encouraged to be successful in life. And I think they gave me the opportunity to go to college and study and become an accountant. And then I did that, but for a while working for these large American companies and seeing lots of zeros, and making lots of rich people happy, because you're reporting their success in life. I felt like there was more to give back, and looking back on what my parents experienced, and how they managed to make all of their four kids growing up in the inner city, all of us, successful in our own way, and have certain achievements. I think that was it, and that's what inspired me to get into the credit union movement. And for me, it's been the best career decision I've made, and I could never go back to anything I did before.
Brilliant.
And there you have it. Even the drug dealers wouldn't employ McCauley.
That's true. That's true.
Good man, Paul.
I think
we got stuck with him.
I think for myself, Gayle, I think thinking back, I've kind of got an interesting background, I suppose. So my great grandfathers emigrated from Germany and Austria, and one was Jewish and one was Christian, to be honest, and they emigrated probably to get out of there because it was a very dangerous place to be before the wars. So they came to Ireland, and like David's background, they lived in the inner city as well. They emigrated here with practically nothing, I'd say. They just came over here with nothing. And they worked really hard, the two of them, the kind of that German work ethic, I'd say, to be honest with you, and they had that focus, and, they settled in, they married Irish ladies. So both of them are Irish parents. And then interestingly, they both married through my grandparents, married each other. So we've kind of a very, very interesting history there. But what was great about them was they did start in, poor circumstances as well, but they were very entrepreneurial in their ways. They set up my granddad set up an upholstery business in Dublin, and he employed again 30 people in the end, which worked really well. And my granddad is my inspiration, really. He worked about 90 at the upholstery. He loved upholstery. And he was in Dublin, in the heart of Dublin, doing that. Very successful business in the end. And the one thing he always said to me was, doesn't matter what you're doing, whatever you're doing, give it your best. If it's sweeping the road, sweep the road to the best you can. or whatever you're doing, and always respect everyone as well. It doesn't matter what they're doing. And I think that's what stood out with me, to be honest.
Yeah.
And he's always been the inspiration.
I love that. And can I come back and ask, I love that you've all mentioned family members as being part of your inspiration, and the reason that you might be the way that you are. What would they say about you if they could see you on this podcast talking about helping your community, helping your members? What if they could get a glimpse of that? What would they say to you?
Well, I lost my mum about 50 years ago now, and I would ask myself that question quite regularly.
Sure.
As I progress through life. And I get a wee bit emotional when I talk about it, you know.
Same.
But I do ask myself that question regularly. What would Mum think of me now?
Yeah.
And I'd like to think she'd be proud of me.
Proud of you.
She absolutely would, Brendan. Yeah.
I think she'd be very proud of Brendan, just to say this. There. I know he's emotional there. Very proud of him, the work he's done in terms of, and he's such a genuine guy, visiting credit unions, you know. And he's not just about photos, to be fair to him. Yes, he does post on LinkedIn a lot with photos, but actually it's much more than that. I've seen him, and I think everyone has here, day in, day out, you know, meeting the staff, going around. It's genuine, it's authentic. And I think, you know, the difference he's made, I think, in that kind of role, and he's very much engaging with everyone. It doesn't matter what credit union they are, what membership they are, you know, he goes to everyone. And I think that's just great. So I think she'd be very proud of him, I'd say.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, like, you know, like Brendan, so I think they probably, my parents were proud. It's actually funny, Gayle, because I actually work in a credit union less than a kilometre away from actually where I grew up. Now it is on the other side of the city, so it's you know, I am regarded as being the north side. I work on the south side, but I think they'd be very happy that, you know, that I'm working in a business that gives so much back to the community and has such a high profile in the community. And it's like, you know, our credit union is very much focused on the community. It's very much focused on other initiatives, you know, sustainability in the local community, financial literacy, financial education, steering kids away from the dangers of drugs, you know, just managing, help people manage their finances better. You know, and it's not all about extending credit, it's about making sure that people's finance resources are managed in a prudent way. So in many respects, you know, using the professional skills that I learned to benefit individuals and by extension then the community. So I think you know, the parents would be very, very happy that I've never kind of moved away. You know, lived in the States for a long time, but I'm back in kind of the heart of Dublin, and hopefully giving back something to a community that always has, you know, needed that little bit of extra help, and will always need that little bit of extra help. So I think in that respect they'd probably look back and give me my dad wouldn't be man for glowing praise, but he might give me a pat on the head. And the funny thing, the only time I ever played well in football, okay, when I knew played well in a match, my dad would clean me boots. He never said, "Well done." He said, "Give us your boots and I'll clean your boots."
I love that.
Dads didn't do the emotional thing back then.
No.
Yeah.
I love that.
And funny, Brendan, when you say that, my dad was a deeply touchy, very brilliant communicator, and always had this thing, you know, that it's too late when you're dead to tell somebody what you thought about him. So he would have often told us, you know, like when I qualified as a nurse, then when I had kids, and when I got involved in the credit union and became chairman, you know, and then the last few, like we nursed him at home, me and my 5 sisters, for the last year. We stayed with him, and me and him had some deep conversations in the nights before he died, you know. And all he wanted, like when you say what they would think, Gayle, was, you know, all he wanted was for his children to live, not just me, but the girls as well, to live out a life of reaching out to one another, keeping the community around you, looking out. He was a great person for, you know, if you haven't heard from a mate in a while, reach out to them, you know, just make sure they're okay. So
he'd be proud of you too.
I would say he would, yeah. He told, like, a couple of nights before he died, you know, we would have a very deep conversation about living and dying and that, you know. He asked me to start losing weight, which I went on and lost 5 stone, and that was the inspiration.
Brilliant.
That I just couldn't let him down because it was the only ask he ever made, you know. So yeah,
I get that.
yeah.
David, what about you? What would your family say?
Yeah, I mean, my mother passed away earlier this year, to be honest, and I think she's a bit like the dads. I think she wouldn't give praise. Yeah, she would be proud, I think, but she wouldn't say to me directly. You know, I have to be honest, she's not that type. She'd probably say to me, "Yeah, you're doing well. What more can you do now?" So I think that she'd be kind of looking at the next phase. She'd be kind of pushing on. I think, you know, she'd be looking. She would be proud, but I think she'd be saying, "Come on, there's more we can do. What else can we do?" So I think that would be her kind of focus.
It's amazing, though, their education and their teaching has filtered through you. We've accidentally met, we've built Money Made Human, and the legacy goes on. It's pretty cool when you
But
think
there are such strong links though between Ireland and Scotland. I mean, we are basically the same DNA, Gayle, when you strip it all away. We have the same cultures of community, of self-help. I mean, when you look at Donegal and Glasgow, I mean, it is basically 2 parishes. You know, innately a bus traveling for years between it every week, you know, people emigrating. So when you talk about Money Made Human, Gayle, we basically come from the same DNA as your city, you know,
it's the same stock.
Yeah.
Paul, can I ask you, your uncle was John Hume, who was an architect of the peace agreement. But I was reading about him, and it said that he wanted to be remembered, though, through his work that he'd done in the credit union movement. Is that right?
He always said, Gayle, that despite winning the 3 peace prizes, he's the only recipient in the world of the Gandhi, the Martin Luther King, and the Nobel Peace Prize. He
Amazing.
always said that his greatest achievement was the foundation of the credit union movement. And no matter where he was or who he was with, he always said that he wanted not alone just to be remembered, but he always viewed it, Gayle, as his finest achievement in life.
Which is incredible.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so
statement.
And humble.
Yeah.
Would that be
I mean,
right?
when you talk about humility, Gayle, when he won the Nobel Peace Prize, he won a significant amount of money. I think Gayle, it was in the region of 250,000, and he split it between 2 charities in Derry and gave every penny away.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think it was to the Foyle Hospice and the Salvation Army, one from both community, I think it was.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask this question or not. But I just wondered what was the journey like for credit unions during the Troubles, during the 70s and 80s? Was that a difficult period? What did that look like?
The journey would have been completely different for the 2 different sectors.
Okay.
Southern Ireland versus Northern Ireland, and I think, like all communities in Ireland, the more than Dave said about Donore and the more than I'd say about Clones or anywhere, we were a very, very poor country back in 1959, 60, that era.
Sure.
So we'd all have had different poorness, you know what I mean? Northern Ireland also then had, I suppose, the religious divide, and I suppose the Catholics being oppressed to a certain degree and yet no access to credit, no access to proper jobs and all that kind of stuff. So I would say that the Northern Ireland community and credit union community had a different experience to the Southern community. But that's where John Hume came in and brought their quality of life up by affording them to get credit at a reasonable rate. So, I have to say, where I'm on the border, I'm literally on the border. I'm a half mile from Northern Ireland. You know, it would have had no big bearing on Clones Credit Union. Whereas I'd say I don't have to say it. It had a massive bearing on why John Hume and people set up Derry Credit Union.
And how is
for the interesting though, is that if you look at now, the Irish League Credit Unions was set up by 6 founding credit unions back in 1960, those credit unions were on an all-round basis, and the Irish League Credit Unions has always been on a 32 county basis. it's viewed as a non-political, non-sectarian. Credit unions are viewed as we don't
They transcend.
Yes,
transcends,
yes,
transcend the
yeah,
community.
yeah.
Now it just so happened that a lot of credit unions would have been based on a parish area, because that would have been the natural community, the parish. So a lot would have adopted the names of saints as their founding. But I think it's really interesting, a good reflection on the Irish credit union movement is that we're still a 32 county body. The southern experience is that the credit unions have different regulatory environments and have a different oversight in the Central Bank of Ireland, and probably have developed in a little bit more of a quicker way. And then the Northern Ireland experience will be a lot more smaller credit unions in Northern Ireland. But I think it's a great statement of fact that the Irish League Credit Union is still one member credit union, one vote. So I think that, and that's something we should really, embrace and stick to. Everybody has an equal say in the Irish credit union movement. But the challenge for the Irish League, and the challenge for David as CEO there, is to kind of sometimes manage those two different political and regulatory environments. And sometimes there's significant differences there. But I think it's a great testament to the Irish League Credit Unions that where we're an all-Ireland body, and our board and the current board of the Irish League Credit Unions has a big say from our from colleagues who live in the 6 counties. So it's I think that's a real positive about the Irish League Credit Unions as well. That it's through the 70s, through the 80s, all through that, it was still a bulwark of Irish communities, and still something that Irish communities, no matter how difficult times went, people were able to still rely on their credit union, and that's what we aspire to continue going forward in the future.
And just one quick thing around your question, Gayle. I mean, the reality is that regardless of what the TV pictures portrayed during the Troubles, both communities lived side by side in a lot of areas and worked their way through Troubles. Catholic and Protestant farmers living side by side, shared machinery, they worked for one another. So whilst there was division in part of it, there was by and large vast areas where they worked side by side on a daily basis.
Paul, I read something that I thought was pretty awesome that your uncle had said, and it was something around, we're not looking for a victory, we're looking for a solution. And I just thought it really resonated with me, because sometimes in the credit union sector, we can argue about things we get passionate about, but bringing it back to that view of let's find a solution for our members, for our communities, really spoke to me.
It was his basic philosophy, Gayle, that in trying to find a solution, it was never about what victory of one side over the other. It was by a consensus approach.
Sure.
I mean, he argued that when he always argued, Gayle, that whatever agreement came to would be put to both sides of the island on the same day in a ballot as a safety mechanism for both communities to know, that it was about consensus. It never was, it was always about finding common ground, as he always said. Gayle, your religion is an accident at birth. You don't choose your religion. It's an accident at birth.
I think, Gayle, I'm sorry, Paul.
No, you're okay, Dave.
I think, Gayle, if you look at credit unions, and listen, we all we often compete against each other, and as you say, we often have rows amongst each other. I think, though, the guiding principle for the league and for credit unions to be successful is, always, irrespective of your competing differences, irrespective of your views or your viewpoints, bring it back to what really matters. And that's the member.
Absolutely.
And when you put the member at the, that's where, consensus arises. That's where, you realize that maybe I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right, whatever. And in the end, it's not about victory. It's about succeeding. I think that's a really strong statement. The credit unions are not in the business of being victorious. We're not there to defeat the banks. We're there to succeed for our members. And I think we need to re-emphasize that. I think the league has a role to play in that, and make sure that
I think it does, Dave. I think that word Gayle, it resonates what John Hume says, is collaboration. That's the big word in the credit union sector at the moment. And there's a lot of talk about what collaboration really means. And it does mean, I think as Dave and Paul have said, it does mean that no one's got the one answer here. That we work together, we come up to the solution and focus on the solution, putting the member first. I think that's really nailed it. And I think, if you take the credit union sector together in Ireland, it's the same size as one of the banks collectively together. And we've made this point a bit, and I think it's something we make ourselves, is there's no such thing as a big, large credit union really in Ireland. All of them are small individual financial players. Even the biggest, are still a small player. The biggest credit union in Ireland probably has about 3% of the full assets of the credit union sector in Ireland. It's still small. And, I often use this analogy. If we work together, we're like that kind of star system, the constellation of stars, that if each one is individual and don't connect and don't work together, they're not very bright. But if they're put together and they work together, it becomes a very bright solar system. All the stars shine brightly, but they must be connected. And that word collaboration is key. And I think, Paul, your uncle's, view on this as well, absolutely agree with that. It's about getting to the solution, putting aside individual pieces, working on a comprehensive solution. I think that's the piece. And it's important, I think, when doing that as well, and this is a live discussion in the Irish Canadian sector, we're increasing our range of products and services. Like, we're doing mortgages, some of us are doing current accounts, we're doing business loans. That sounds like we're becoming a bank, but we're not. And that's the key. We don't want to become a bank either. We still maintain that core operating principles. That's the key. So while we grow, we still maintain those principles. And I think that's a fundamental discussion. That's probably the league's goal, is to maintain that culture in the sector, never to lose that, because if we do, that will not be a good end.
David, you're living Money Made Human too. It's the same story. I wanted to ask Brendan a question, please. Brendan, I know you're fairly new to role, aren't you, as president of the Irish League? And I just wondered how are you finding the role, and what's your hopes for the future with the league?
Yeah, I joined the board and became president in April, start of May, I suppose, really. So it's a there's been a big learning curve, in so many different ways, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I enjoy the interaction with the credit unions that David mentioned earlier on. I try to, like this week, I'm in credit unions every day this week. We had an exceptionally nice ceremony on Sunday, and on yesterday I had down in Kerry, and so I love that whole interaction. And then you have the serious stuff. You have chairing the board. You're trying to get changes made. You're trying to get just governance stuff done. Operational stuff handed over to David Malone and let him do it. So there's a serious side to the role. But taking it all as a whole package, it's a lovely honour. What sort of amazes me about it, is the respect for the role of president when I go visiting credit unions, even to credit unions who we may not be flavour of the month with. When you go as president, there's that natural respect, which I find very humbling. I really do. I still sometimes think, is that me? They're sort of clear the way, let the president in. In relation to trying to change, I'm not going to try to change the credit union movement in any big way. I think the two, and Dave, the three on board here know my thinking is really to try and to, I suppose, close down the fragmentation of our movement. I suppose I use the expression, it's no longer us and them, it's just us. And if we all can adopt that mantra, that it's just us as a unit, whether that's the Echo Insurance or whether it's CUDA or CUMA or the Alliance, it doesn't matter who it is, that at the end of the day, we're all just us, one group of credit union people trying to do our best, maybe with slightly different directions, slightly different roads we take. So that, and I suppose the other thing that I'm very passionate about is the culture. I want to try and ensure that and I don't probably have to work too hard in this one, but just ensure that culture, and that what John Hume and my chairman in Clone has done back in 1958 and Dave's credit union 58, 59, 60, that culture and the reason why we all started, you can't go backwards, but always remember the past, I think is important. So I don't have any big, election campaign or big things to change, but just simple stuff. But I suppose my big word is unity. Just try and unify the movement, unify people, and that we all can work and talk to each other in a very positive way and bring forward our movement.
It's a human story. I also wanted to ask Dave, you are the CEO of the oldest credit union in Ireland. I guess, are you proud of that? And also, what's your own hopes for the future?
He was the first CEO too.
Lots of I love you laying no, listen, it struck me when I joined Donore back in 2016. You know, and the credit unions are remarkably humble organisations, and you know, it struck me that they stopped claiming that distinction, and I think it's a distinction. I think it's a remarkable thing to be the very first credit union in the country. So immediately I said about reclaiming that ownership of that story, because we don't have lots of things that competitively make us different or strengthen us. But the fact is that being the very first is a unique quality, and we need to embrace that. We need to remind people of that, and we own that. But more importantly, we actually have to maintain that legacy. So what we've when we look back at what the founding principles or the founding members of the Donore, the Bourne sisters did, what were they really there for? And we take everything apart and we distill it down. They were there to do one thing, that was neighbor help neighbor. And I think that's such a simple philosophy, neighbor helping neighbor. And that's what they did effectively. And that's what the credit union, it wasn't to have mortgages. It wasn't to have current accounts. It wasn't to have online transactions. It just so happened that they were using the vehicle of financial services to help neighbor. So we've taken her on a step a little bit further now, because when we think about that, and this will be kind of probably the theme of the conversation that we're having on Friday night with the Scottish League, it's really about that sense of empowerment. And I think the credit unions fundamentally are about empowering. They're empowering individuals, they're empowering our members, and they're by extension empowering the communities. So where we're at in Donore, I think that's reflective. That belief is reflected so well in a phrase that we developed: "Do more with Donore." And I think that's a statement. I think that's a statement of intent. Do more with Donore. That's not just do more savings, not do more loans, but do more in your life.
Do more life.
Meet your ambition. Do more life. Okay. Yeah. And I think that's what credit unions, and what I personally like to say, I think credit unions should embrace, every credit union should embrace that philosophy, that they're not just to empower people through additional financial services. They're not through to strengthen their own balance sheet. But we were actually the very first credit union as well to do a social impact study back in 2019. We published that in 2020. And what was really interesting about that social impact study and the tools we used was that it helped us, it actually reminded the board, the volunteers, and the credit union members themselves that we're so much more than our balance sheet. And I think credit unions sometimes get caught up in, our balance sheet is this. But actually what we found is a surplus. And what we actually found was actually our balance sheet measurements did not actually reflect the true worth of the credit union, which was so much more. So I think what I'd like to see for the credit union movement is to realize that we're more than just financial services. We are basically community neighbours. We are the bedrock of our community. Paul mentioned the banking crisis, but during COVID, every credit union stayed open. Like churches were closed, school halls were closed, schools were closed. The local shop might have been open, but everywhere else was closed. Yet the credit union remained open. And we had to actually discourage some of our older members coming in, I'm putting in €5 today, putting in €5. You can't do that. But we're social organisations, and that's really what we are. We're not financial institutions, we're social organisations. And I think that's what I would like to hope for our future, that we carry forward. And we do that quite well, but sometimes we're guilty of, and we need reminding that's really what we're fundamentally about. So I think the future is good for credit unions. I think the opportunities are there. There's new legislation has been introduced in Ireland. I think there's a realisation at government level that credit unions have a bigger part to play in societal problems. The housing crisis, for instance. I think for a credit union even of our size, the fact that we do so much in the financial literacy space. Like we go to schools, we're invited to the schools to talk about financial literacy. So how can we, nationally deliver on the government's financial literacy strategy? How can we, empower communities? We've got tons of money, 16 billion of unlent money in the Irish credit union sector. How can we use that money to generate momentum in our society rather than investing it in German or French government T-bills or banks or whatever? How can we use that money? So I think there's lots of potential. And again, it really is to get back to that big statement that we make no excuse for broadcasting the fact we're the oldest credit union. Actually,
he does mention it occasionally.
Just ever so occasionally.
And that title comes with a fair bit of ribbon now. You know what I mean?
No, fair. My ambition,
again, he loves it. He loves it.
Gayle, if you're familiar with Only Fools and Horses, Brandon always talks about during the war. Well, this is now when he mentions about the known, it's a during the war moment.
Well, listen, the successful stuff. Now we Google. And now says, what's Ireland's college credit union? Donore is there. So thanks for the God. So we do something.
He loves it. He loves it.
I love it.
Gayle, when you talk about money made human, if I could tell a story about how that's lived out. In 1999, Gayle, I was a member of the credit union, but not on the board. And we had a nurses' strike in Ireland. Both of my wife and me were young nurses. We had a young family and a new mortgage. And the strike went into the third week, and it looked like it was going to go for the month. And I suddenly realised there's going to be no paycheck, and for either myself or Marie this month. I have a small loan in the credit union and a mortgage. And I approached both of them to say, look, if this goes to the end of the month, I will have literally no money. The difference in how I was treated in both institutions will live with me to the day I die. The compassion that was shown to me in Letterkenny Credit Union, where I wasn't the director, I was just a member, compared to how I was treated when I went to the bank, will live and drives me every day of the week to keep that ethos going, that ethos of compassion, of care, of listening, of just that staff member understanding my position compared to the corporate approach of the bank is what drives me every day in the credit union.
I love that. And I was just going to ask you all, if someone was listening to this that wasn't a member of a credit union in Ireland or in the UK, what would you say? But that story, I think, encapsulates
there's my story anyway.
That answers it for us all.
It's perfect. We're going to be joined now by some of the team from First Class. We've asked the team to give us a random selection of questions. Hi, team.
Hello.
Hello, ladies.
Hi, folks. How are we doing?
Good.
We've asked the team.
Will you listen to that whole big long story?
I wish we'd recorded the first part. We had this in tears.
So we've asked the team to come up with some random questions. We don't know what they are. Some of them will be life questions. Some of them will be credit union related. So I think we've to pick a number. Is that right?
Yeah, 1 to 5. 1 to 5.
We do one each.
Yes.
Well, sure, I'll do number 1 then.
Okay, this is the funniest one we've actually got. Can you split the G?
Can you split the
G?
In a pint of Guinness. Can you drink it down to the G?
He's a non-drinker.
Well, you could have asked.
So I don't know what the G is.
Ask Dave McCauley
that one.
That's a wrong one for me.
Okay.
That's very funny.
Dave, can you split the G?
I can, but I'd rather not. Guinness is there to be enjoyed, not devoured.
Well, Brendan, we'll ask you another question then. So what has been the biggest life lesson in your life so far?
Oh my gosh.
It's a brilliant question.
Yeah.
I suppose Brendan, not making it easy for us, are they?
No, they're not.
We like to deep dive.
My biggest life, I suppose, thing, I suppose, is very personal, and I don't mean that in that I'm not answering it. It's very much family related to my mum dying, my father being an alcoholic, and how that shaped me and changed me and done a lot of things in my life. So it's a very broad answer, that one, but that's generally the gist of it. My past was very difficult, and how I got to where I am today, which I suppose is my story.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
That was great.
I'll take number 2.
Okay. So you've touched on this a little bit throughout, but how important do you believe credit unions are in today's economic climate?
Good question for Paul Hume.
Good question. Listen. They are the cornerstone of our community. They are how our community operates, how it functions. It's not just about how big your loan book is or how big your shares are. It's the impact you have on the lives of our members. You know, that they can have a holiday, they can educate their children, they can have a better quality of life than they would have done if they weren't a credit union member. And I think that's what we should always strive for, is to keep improving the lives of our members and our community.
Perfect.
Thank you. Brilliant question. Thank
I'll
you.
take the next one if that's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, another fun one.
These have not been that long though. Go on.
So what are 3 things you would take to a deserted island?
Oh my God.
Oh God. Right. Okay.
We take the
because
3
these are
of
gonna be
us.
very naff. These are going to be very naff.
Yours 3.
Us 3.
Okay. Okay. I have a couple of things actually. And this is terrible to admit this on air. I'd bring the Eurovision greatest hits album of all the winners.
Oh dear Jesus!
I'm afraid to say. I'm sorry, but I would.
Please delete that.
That's real.
Delete that.
Sorry. I'd bring as well.
Dave.
Coke.
Oh yes, thank you.
Coke.
Thank you.
And
I love
Malibu
Pepsi Max.
Coke.
He's right.
Malibu
Actually, Paul's
Coke.
right. I love Pepsi Max. Yes. And the other thing I'd bring is I love football history, and my uncle got me a book. Oh, it must have been about 20, 30 years ago. It was the history of the Football League in England from 1888 to 1988, and I love that book. There's all the history of the league going back to when it was founded. So I love that book, and there's always something new to find it. So they'd be the 3 items. I'm sorry I said the Eurovision.
You notice he wasn't bringing he wasn't bringing the wife with him.
Noted.
I'll never live that down. I better not say
You can feel the heat off him here. He's gone very red.
I'll take the next question. Was there another question though?
Yeah, one more. This one is for you, actually, so this is perfect. How much influence do you feel you have in the credit union industry as CEO of the oldest credit union in Ireland and treasurer of the International League of Credit Unions?
During the
Even
war.
the staff now.
Here we go again, Brian.
During the war.
Listen, as the very first credit union, I think it is a unique thing, and I think we need to adhere to the credit union operating principles and make sure that we lead by example. Donore is a small credit union. Like Donore has, less than 6,000 members. But we punch above our weight. I ran for election for the league board because it's easy sitting on the sidelines criticizing, or to sit on the sidelines throwing barbs in or whatever. So I actually said, listen, I ran for the league, and I'm delighted to say that there has been some positive impact, and I think there has definitely been a change of lots of positive changes happening, and which is great to see, and hopefully we'll strengthen our movement. As treasurer, that's a challenging role. You're there to manage the expense and manage the oversight, manage spend, look at the finances, be conscious of that. But that's all very welcome. But I suppose the most important thing is that I've been given, I was elected like Brendan and like Paul. We were elected by our peers to serve on the league board, and that's a very humbling thing to achieve. That people put their support and faith and belief in you to do something. So I think that's really been the kind of sort of the grounding thing of this, that and people are seeing and hopefully want to see and expect positive change from you. And Brendan spoke about disunity and fragmentation, and I think that's a great thing to overcome if we can unite our movement. And David made reference to the fact that there's no such thing as a big credit union in Ireland, but collectively we're a force to be reckoned with. So I think what that's been the big thing. And I suppose for the last thing I'd say, come back to Donore. We're a smaller credit union that struggled for a number of years and have now successfully turned the corner. Just yesterday we've obviously signed off financials. So we're seeing another year of loan book growth, almost 10% loan book growth for the year. And I think what I'd like to do in terms of that Donore specifically as an example to other credit unions, irrespective of your size, irrespective of the nature of the credit union, you can still be successful. But you have to have the right focus. You have to have the right level of positivity. You have to have the right board. You have to have the right staff. You have to have the right systems. And most importantly, you always have to put your members first, and you always have to be a human institution. And I think that's kind of the message that I kind of leave off on, that there's two different things there, but they're both very humbling.
Can I just add one little footnote to that before we finish up, just to say, as much as we do slag Dave about being first, and we have a bit of a competition going between us, but it's all in jest. We respect his position, and Dave has turned it around as an individual, a CEO. But just coincidentally, 60 whatever number of years on, the three principal officers of the league are myself, which is the first credit union outside of Dublin in Ireland, and in the league office, regardless of where Dave is, we're 001. Dave is treasurer as the first credit union in Ireland, and Derry Credit Union's Patricia is my vice president as the first credit union in Northern Ireland. So coincidentally, 66 or 7 years on, the three founding credit unions in Ireland, shall we call us, are now back leading the movement into all the things that we talked about today.
It's just a brilliant legacy as well.
Yeah,
for sure.
Gayle, could I come in with a final
of course.
piece? Forgive me for this pronunciation, right? But I prepared this, so
this is a cake he prepared earlier.
I know.
I hope it's not a Eurovision song.
No, it's not. No. That's for the next podcast, Gayle. I just want to say this. Keed class agus Gayle. Topic live gomor arsún an una. Hashin le tuilicte le os les cadrugas ironach. Non enach credus gun de reinsure shugan onjuig. And I'm sure you all understood what that meant. That is Scottish Gaelic. I hope it is Scottish Gaelic. My pronunciation, I hope, is right. But I just want to say on behalf of the RTE credit unions and the credit union sector, we're delighted to engage with yourselves, First Class and Gayle, and the team today in this great podcast. So hopefully that made some sense there. But that's a bit of Scottish Gaelic anyway.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
May I just ask one final question, if I can? In March of 2026, Ireland plays Scotland in the Six Nations at home. Who are you going for? Dave's face.
He says, I'm not answering stupid questions.
He's going to get a football jersey.
He's getting a flag.
He's going to get a football jersey and lay a tenner.
I am.
Yes.
I knew he was going to get a
jersey. Ladies, can I just say that jersey will be going back to the shop? Don't think for 1 minute he owns it. Gayle, I heard an analogy once, and I think it's one thing that we use when we have long-standing people leaving our movement. Somebody once said to me, we talk a lot about people who founded the credit union, but we forget about the people who have kept it going in the last 60 years. And somebody once said to me, that any two people can conceive a child, but it's the nurturing of it. And we sometimes forget about all the hundreds of people who, along the last 60 years, in every village throughout the country, who have turned up on a volunteer basis to make the movement what it is today. And I think we should never forget that journey either.
I had the honour on Friday night last, just coincidentally, of going down the country to a town called Clonmel, where the local mayor recognised a lady called Kathleen Halpin, who's just gone 90, for her 50-year service to one credit union in Clonmel.
Brilliant.
Like, incredible service.
And that's exactly, that kind of typifies, Brendan, what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Can I just say a huge thank you to you all? Thank you for speaking in Scottish Gaelic as well. That was so nice. But can I
was
say
it Scottish Gaelic?
It was Scottish Gaelic, yes.
I know it
was. Let me just say a huge thank you to you all for being so open and kind and really spreading the message that credit unions are important and that humanness within that is really important. I asked you earlier, what would your parents and your family members say that you said had inspired you in the journey? And I think I can say for all of us, they'd be so proud of you. They would be so proud of you and the way you behave and the way you act and what you give of yourselves. So a huge thank you. Lots of love from everyone here at First Class. And yeah, we'll be in contact when Scotland win the rugby.
That'll be. We'll see you in 50 years then.
Goodbye, Ireland.
Bye-bye, everybody. See you, lady.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Money Made Human podcast. We're grateful to spend time with you and hope you enjoyed it. If you want to join a credit union, choose us. With love, until the next time, First Class Credit Union.